Video. You know you need it. You know it's all but expected from Gen Z at this point. But you've got no time and little budget, and your Marcom department is 2 months late on those new program brochures they promised. So, asking them to help with a video? Forget it. But what if video could be as simple as sending an email to a prospective student? Meet GoodKind, a video engagement platform designed to make each one of your prospects feel like they're getting the extra special treatment. As an enrollment manager, you're competing for attention. And in a sea full of static, boring HTML emails from other schools, a personal video is how you stand out and drive action. With GoodKind, you can bring your university, faculty, and students to life by designing an engaging, hyper-personalized, and video-first communications journey. Increase applications, increase yield, and decrease melt with the power of GoodKind. Visit wearegoodkind.com/Enrollify to book a demo and see just how powerful video marketing can be. Show your face, show you care, see the difference connection makes at wearegoodkind.com/Enrollify.
When I was in ad school back in college, when we had, and this was way long ago, this is the 90s, early 90s, but when we went into the copywriting class and we were told, the assignment is to create a print ad that would go in whatever magazine. And back then we're drawing it out, maybe using a Xerox copier to put type, down. But the only way that we could complete the assignment was if we mimicked what we'd already seen in the magazines, and it's like, if you did something that was off, it got a bad grade. But if you did something that looked like an ad, you got a good grade. And I think that a lot of people feel that by doing things that look like ads, they're hitting a checkbox that says, okay, this is legit. This is how it should look.
All right, Todd. So we literally connected on Twitter. I think it was 48 hours ago, like almost literally 48 hours ago to the second here. And I posted a tweet saying my podcast guest for this week had to reschedule, and Seth Odell responded and said I should talk to you. So we don't really have an agenda for this conversation other than to connect. And I have since in the past 24 hours done a little bit of stalking of you and learned a little bit, but have some questions for you. But first and foremost, welcome to the Enrollify podcast.
Well, thank you. And thanks, Seth. Yeah.
Yeah, Seth is great. His recommendations have never failed to deliver. So hopefully you won't be the first.
That's all
right. Well, I've got a couple of initial questions here and prepared, and then I really want to just kind of get into a brainstorm and pick your brain on a few things that I've been thinking about that I think, based off of some of your recent social media posts, you might also be thinking about. First and foremost, so you at University of Florida for a couple years, I guess, almost exactly 2 years, you held a role that was called Senior Director of Innovation and Engagement, and I feel like that's just such a badass job title. What were you doing in that role? What did that role consist of?
Great question. Now, I mean, titles are titles. So you get creative with titles over time. But I mean, at the core of it was thinking up new ways to do things. Higher ed is very cyclical, where we go through the same thing over and over. Social provides new takes on things. Every year there's something different happening. Every month, every week there's something different happening. So it's more about exploring opportunities to keep relevant in a space that is crowded with a lot of noise. And I don't know, it's just a title, like right now the title's different, but what happens inside the head and the things that you're trying to accomplish are, still the same.
And was this housed within University Marketing Communications, or
Yep.
Okay, so it's part of
strategic communications and marketing,
okay,
is what we call it here.
Okay.
Yeah, so that it's we deal with good news and bad news. And during the COVID times, things kind of with social things definitely. Our brand is fun. University of Florida is fun. And during COVID, we kind of had to alter some things and go into more of especially, I mean, we were University of Florida was definitely like like I mentioned previously as we were talking,
Yeah.
we had 2 months of work from home and then we were back at the office. So the things that we do, we didn't want to, look tone deaf.
Yeah.
We
Yeah.
definitely wanted to make sure that it was a scary time to try to be fun. Um, so
Yeah, yeah. No, that's super interesting. And you've been in the social game and the content creation game and the creative game for a while now. And I haven't talked to actually too many people that have been in higher ed and also in social for years like you have. I feel like
yeah,
it's become a little bit more of a recent phenomenon that you're seeing really cool people that are great content creators that have done social for in other industries, kind of making their way into higher education. But you've been in the game here for a while. What was
yeah.
like what was it like in like the early days of trying to help an institution understand how to do social well?
Oh, it was awesome. I mean, it was the most fun I've ever had in my career. Was trying to convince people to join something that where you post your lunch. There was like nobody understood anything. And the people that were understanding, like I wasn't the first person on Twitter, but that year that it really took off at South by, it was like there was a community of people, and then there was a higher ed community. Um, and it was fun to see the ideas start hatching and how things could evolve into Web 2.0. It was such a awesome concept. Like in the beginning days, I was a webmaster, which is the weirdest thing ever. But that Web 1.0, I guess, was you had to learn so much. You had to acquire a domain, you had to get a server, you had to understand HTML, you had to do all this stuff that wasn't the creative stuff, but the stuff that you needed to do to get your creative stuff out there. And then Web 2.0, I mean, it like flipped the script where everybody could, take part in this cool network of things on the internet. And yeah, but the joy in it was the discovery on my end, the discovery and other people in higher ed that were like, holy, you cuss on your podcast or no,
Yeah,
man?
yeah. You're free.
Okay,
Yes.
there's like, they're like, holy shit, dude, this is like perfectly aligned with, our target audience. This is perfectly aligned with our community on campus. This is next. But like at the very dawn of it, no, it was impossible. It was like we at UW Green Bay, we acquired all of the Twitter handles for like admissions, at admissions, at registrar, at career services, and all these top level things where I was like, hey, this could pan out. But trying to sell at Student Life to the Student Life office, they're like, there's nobody on it but you. And it's like, yeah, but someday.
Yeah.
And it was fun to watch that evolve. And God bless Oprah, because Oprah, like, really, once Oprah joined Twitter, and did her all caps tweet, that's when things finally started clicking around campus, that, or with the older folks on campus who are doing the jobs, that this is actually this is viable. This is something that has legs, and maybe let's play on Twitter, and let's figure out, Facebook, and let's do these things. So,
Wow.
but yeah, no, that was the fun times, man. And it was fun because everybody was learning. Um, and everybody in higher ed's always been like this. You want to help each other. So it was about, hey, did you see this cool thing? Did you do this? Hey, and so there's a lot of bouncing things back and forth. I mean, Seth, who we talked about earlier, um, he did a video podcast type thing, that higher ed live. Um, I went on there with my son. My son was dressed up as a banana, I think, and we're just, it was fun. We were learning all together. But I mean, it was tough to do things back then, because you had to do all kinds of things. Like what we're doing today on Zoom is so simple.
Yeah.
We're spoiled now, but back in the day it was very complex. But I think the struggle is what made it awesome. And seeing what worked some places and didn't work other places. Higher ed's very you got large publics, the flagships. Where I am now, a flagship kills it instantly on social. We could go anywhere and we have a following.
Yeah.
Whereas at UW Green Bay, it was very much grassroots. Come on, man, let's try to do something. And but it also gives us opportunities to do things that you can't do at the big schools. You can really dive in and do things, and if nobody's watching, you can play even harder.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm curious, what somebody who responded to my tweet actually, I'm looking up his name right now. Brian Nickel. He
Yeah,
responded and he said to talk to us a little bit about your first gig at UW Green Bay. So I don't know if there's a
yeah.
specific story he had in mind or how well you might know him, but is there a story beyond the story you just shared about acquiring these handles really really early on during that time that really stands out as a pivotal moment to you?
Yeah, Brian, he was a assistant athletic director. So
Okay.
one of the cool things about my job when I got the job, I was a webmaster for student affairs and athletics. And UW Green Bay is a Division I school, and so I was doing Brian and I and Sheila were basically another assistant athletic director. We're basically trying to figure out, or it's sports information director. I'm sorry, not athletic director. But we were trying to figure out, how to take the website to the next level. So that was one of the big projects for when I first got there was to redesign and build a Division I athletics website.
Huh.
And it was Brian's smart, and I don't know if he was still there when we were messing around with Twitter, but he's definitely. I mean, he's used it in his professional career now. He works in a school district, and he's killing it. He's using it to connect, but I mean, it's all everything evolves.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
and I know we're going into Web 3, maybe,
Yeah.
and it's like, what is next? But I mean, at the core of it, it's all about relationships and building things and community. And no, man, Utica Green Bay was a phenomenal place to work, a
Yeah.
great opportunity. Had lovely people that I worked with, uh, and Brian's definitely one of them.
So I want your thoughts on it. It seems to me too. Again, I wasn't paying as much attention to this space, a couple decades ago. But in the last 10 years, it seems that, and I feel like this is true of all industries and how industries have just kind of like approached social in general. Is they first get on it and it becomes sort of like a channel for distribution, right? Like a channel for like communication dissemination, essentially. Like, come to this event, we are doing this thing,
Yeah,
etc. Now it feels like social across industries, but even in higher ed, like it's kind of evolved into more of like a creative sandbox. Like it's you're trying to be creative for the sake of delivering some compelling message that is platform specific. And many schools are terrible at this. Many people are terrible at this, but I think more and more people are kind of catching on, at least the savvy ones, that hey, people want something that they can kind of consume and be entertained by and learn something from. I think TikTok is a
mm-hmm.
great example of this as a
Mm-hmm.
platform. So how, like, any thoughts on that evolution, like from your perspective of when social media became a place to kind of like flex your creativity as opposed to just like disseminate information?
Yeah, I mean the parallels between being a webmaster. So when you build a website, basically all emphasis was placed on a brochure that the department had, and all you did was cut apart the brochure and make a website template off of it, and it was like brochure on the web. And then the web kind of evolved, where things got more sophisticated and interesting. And you go to a website now, and things are just, whoa, what is happening here? This is not a brochure. This is actually they thought of this before they thought of their brochure, if they still have a brochure. The web, I see it kind of differently than you, because at that beginning phase, I think it was the sandbox phase for a lot of the people that were were doing the things, but it's on a
Hmm.
personal level.
Yeah.
It wasn't so much on a company level. But if you learn to play as a person first, which we all do, um, and then taking maybe what someone else sees as, hey, this we got to do our brochure on social, and but you're like, hey, you know what doesn't work on social? That brochure. What works on social is when you connect with people.
Yeah.
So it's um I think that some places have had it right from the start. I think some places um bounce back and forth. where I don't think it's as much of I don't know how to say this,
Like a
but
linear progression. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
no, I think it's got its ebbs and flows, and there. I mean, I think COVID is a perfect example of that. When it came on social, or any or not a popular event, but any trending topic that is bad, or any crisis that happens that, it's like, hey, mute your account today.
Yeah.
But there's, I think it's more of a, you got to see what works.
Yeah.
Sometimes
It's more
what you're
cyclical in
doing,
nature. Yeah.
yeah, and then sometimes what you're doing doesn't work, but that doesn't mean that it won't work later on.
Yeah.
It's sometimes your audience has to evolve up to what you're doing, and people don't see value in it. And I think that's, if the focus has always been on creating community, it's hard to justify, uh, the more something looks like an ad, the more something looks like marketing, the less likely people are going to embrace it as, something more fluid, like a relationship.
Hey, all, Zach here from Enrollify. If you like this podcast, chances are you'll like other Enrollify shows too. Our podcast network is growing by the month, and we've got a plethora of marketing, admissions, and higher ed technology shows that are jam-packed with stories, ideas, and frameworks that are all designed to empower you to become a better higher ed professional. Our shows feature a selection of the industry's best as your hosts. Learn from Mickey Baines, Jeremy Tears, Jaime Hunt, Corynn Myers, Jaime Gleason, and many, many more. You can learn more about the Enrollify Podcast Network at podcasts.enrollify.org. Our shows help higher ed marketers and admissions professionals find their next big idea. Find yours at podcasts.enrollify.org. So why do you think, if that's true, which I believe it is, why is there still so much, especially in higher education, social advertising that is like tone deaf? Like why are
Yeah.
schools still spending hundreds of thousands of dollars, millions of dollars a year on these campaigns that do look exactly like an ad? Like where does that come from?
I don't know. I don't know if it's you're in the enrollment space, so it's obviously not like they're trying to target it to people that like the look of ads. It's so, I mean, you can justify something saying, hey, you don't know who the target audience is for this, and people get comfortable if they see this billboard on the internet and say, oh yeah, okay. But I mean, I think it's just what's always been done. And I think the evolution of social has happened so much more quickly than the evolution of marketing. And I think that when you look at the traditional side of things and how things have always been done, and it's not even always been done. I mean, marketing wasn't always in higher ed. Marketing in higher ed just happened, I don't know how long ago. I'm like, you just enter something that makes me sound smart. Your little thing.
Yeah,
But
10, 20 years ago. Yeah. Yeah,
yeah, but
probably about 20 years ago. Yeah.
yeah. So I mean, but even in that, I'm not going to say like the most creative people don't go into higher ed, but I feel like creative people have options.
Mm,
And I'm not saying that higher ed, like shit, I worked here, 20 years in
yeah.
higher ed, maybe I don't have options, but there's higher ed's different. And I think that the people that are in higher ed are somehow built different. And I don't think that you don't have to, I don't think there's as much emphasis on creativity and cleverness and community.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think
But
that's just because there's a traditional take on what marketing is. Just
yeah.
when I was in ad school or back in college, uh, when we had, and this was way long ago, this is the 90s, early 90s. But when we went into the copywriting class and we were told the assignment is to create a print ad that would go in whatever magazine.
Yeah.
And back then we're drawing it out, maybe using a Xerox copier to put type, down. But the only way that we could complete the assignment was if we mimicked what we'd already seen in the magazines, and it's like, if you did something that was off, it got a bad grade. But if you did something that looked like an ad, you got a good grade. And I think that a lot of people feel that by doing things that look like ads, they're hitting a checkbox that says, okay, this is legit. This is how it should look. And I think that the world has evolved, and I think that social is an excellent place to to shake that up.
I mean, it makes a lot of sense in the industry too, given how just academia works, right? And like the how peers, how important sort of like peer culture is in academia, and so like imitation, right,
Mhm.
is important. It's kind of like rooted in higher education and
Yep.
in a lot of its programming, and so but like I guess what I think a lot about is higher education as an industry, right? And people are talking about this ad nauseum is under lots of scrutiny. Like it seems quote unquote ripe for disruption. There's the 2026 cliff that everyone's been talking about for years, right? Like there are all these like forces at play. There's the disruptions that COVID caused, and so to your point too about like this being creative people kind of like having options and doing lots of things. It also kind of seems to me that like an industry that does have these challenges and yet a plethora of opportunities and
Hmm.
incredibly it's an incredibly important like social good education is.
Yep.
It sort of seems like we're in this moment right now where higher ed does need these innovative thinkers. Higher ed does need people to come in and or grow within to be able to create compelling offers. And creating compelling offers is the first step to then creating compelling advertising, right? And so I guess as you think about the next couple years here, the next 2-3 years, like what are the things that you're paying most attention to, and like who are the players that you think the industry needs more of in order to remain competitive?
Yeah, I think higher ed does a bad job at selling itself to workforce. I think what can the University of Florida offer a young creative that most other places can't, or most other industries can't, is uh, if you're in the social game, uh, there is no better place to work than higher ed because you're forced to evolve. It's like
Hmm.
when the University of Florida joined TikTok in 2018, it was cringy. The interns were turned off by it. They're like, "This is what my kid's sister does, and you guys have no right to be there." And but you're kind of forced to always be looking to these demographics that are using these new tools, and so higher ed offers the opportunity for anybody who's creative to constantly stay fresh with that target audience, better than anybody else. And we're so dedicated to that audience, and that audience is on our campus.
What does the industry need to do? What does higher ed need to do to change to be more attractive to these creatives? Because, right, we need creative problem solvers. We need creative leaders in
Mhm.
this space if we, again, want to reimagine our offerings as institutions.
Yeah,
For some, I mean, University of Florida is in a different state than many institutions, but like
yeah.
many institutions aren't in a fantastic state. They don't have. I mean, they're not many of them aren't public that are in these dire financial straits. But beyond that, there's this reckoning that has happened again throughout not even just the states. This is kind of like a global phenomenon around what is the value of higher education, right?
Yeah.
And how do we sort of reframe this so that this social good, this thing that is very important to the well-being of our children of our society, continues to be seen that way, right? And what shoring up does need to happen in order for that to be true. And then who do we need to bring like onto the team to help communicate that offering? And so, I think are hitting on a couple of these points. To dive in a little bit further I guess to add on to what you were saying, it's also true, right? In addition to being forced to constantly change as a creative in higher ed, it's also true that like you'll have access to, depending on the institution, but really working in social in any college or university, you're going to have access to a massive audience comparatively. Like
Mhm.
the audience that University of Florida has compared to the audience that a young startup has in terms of its social audience is night and day, right? Like it's massive, and having access as a creator to a massive audience can accelerate that
Mhm.
learning. I think that's another thing that isn't touted enough or talked enough about as you think about like the channels, or actually a better question here is just like what is heavy on your mind right now as you like look out, right, and the current state of higher ed, the current state of social, the current state of marketing. What are things that you're paying attention to, and things that you're either worried about and or excited about?
Yeah, what I hate is influencers, and I hate the fact that we've devoted time to courting people to do our content. What I love is a community of engaged people that create because they want to create. And I mean, our opportunity as a campus is to provide those shareable moments and to make people want to document their day on campus and to share it with others. And I think that as we get from the read internet to the read write internet to the read write own internet, if we don't have that community of people, and whether see we're spoiled at the University of Florida because I could, maybe not during the summer, but any other time of year I could look out this window and we could find 10 people that have followings that are, you know, dedicated to, you know, what they're doing, and there's a circle of influence between what they do. Are they influencers? Yeah, man, everybody's an influencer, right? But they're also passionate about the place, and they want to share the good things and the bad things, and that's what makes it great. But building that out further, I think our intent as a university to get these people to tell these stories, it has to be genuine. You know, it can't be, we want this marketing message in your mouth, and you know. But
So how do
I
how
think,
do how do like marketing and creative leaders like facilitate those kinds of environments at on campus, like within their community? Because what you're saying, it makes perfect sense. But like if you don't naturally have that, or maybe you do have that, but you're not aware of it, like how do you help facilitate culture that is conducive to that?
yeah, I mean, one of the ways is to, you know, encourage people to, you know, it's basic stuff, right? Like many moons ago, we would do, and we still do this, but at EW Green Bay, we would, during commencement, you know, if you use our hashtag, you know, we'll put you up on the jumbotron. Back in the day when Twitter was just taking off, I mean, I don't, I, I'm almost positive there weren't photos on Twitter back in the day, you know, and but once there were, then it became an opportunity.
I feel like I'm like tapping into a whole like wealth of knowledge right now, and I'm just like I'm soaking it all in. So I have another follow up question for you on
Yeah.
this because, um, like,
I'll pay attention this time, I
okay, if you
promise.
this is about you. Like, how do you think through like developing social strategy? Like, what is your creative process look like, and what are there things that you're doing now that you weren't doing like 2 or 3 years ago even, and like if so, what are those things?
Yeah, no. So at the University of Florida, it was really super simple. When I was recruited here, it was to get them in the top 10 of US News World Report. So having strong goals and knowing audiences helps build those strategies. Uh, we got to the top 10, and then the goal post removed, and it was to get to the top five. That was accomplished last year. Uh, so the trying to figure out how to create a strategy, but it has to be this institutional thing, right?
Yeah,
It can't just be like, hey, social strategy. But honestly, there is parts to it where it can be just a social strategy. Building community is the hugest thing. The biggest opportunity was social, and it's not learned from an institutional lens. It's learned from a personal lens on what social can do
yeah,
and what makes it unique. Why would you use it? And it's not to, you know, just say you're great. It's to encourage other people to say you're great, or,
yeah,
you know, to find the people that think you're great, and to see what they're doing and to learn about new opportunities.
yeah,
um, we're storytellers at heart with the content, but content discovery happens on social. I mean, there's so many things that social does that are impossible to do if you sit behind a desk all day.
yeah,
You
yeah.
know, it's like social allows us to be out on campus all day, even if we are at the desk or
When
out
you
of pocket.
Yeah, when you think about like hiring for your teams, like and bringing people on board, like are you looking for people? Like do you go and evaluate their personal like socials to
That's
understand?
that's creepy, Zach. No, man, we don't do that. But I mean, it's like
Or like
there's like two.
how do you assess if they're good at creating content, if they like my generation, like everybody thinks that they're good at social media, right? Like everyone
Yeah.
thinks that they know
Yeah.
social media. It's not like and most don't. And so like I guess like how do you think through, like how do you help understand whether or not people are going to be good at this?
I don't think, I mean, sure, you can look at reels and see what they're doing or look at their past projects. But I mean, it comes down to like what is a fit for the University of Florida? It's like a passion for the craft and a
Yeah.
passion for the place
Hmm.
or the industry, so it's like, I said something earlier about like higher ed. It's how do you recruit? Man, we're not causing the diabetes and the cancer. We're trying to cure that. At this, and like you can say that all over higher ed, but like at this university right here outside these windows, they're doing that. Like today, someone is actually, that is their focus of their day, is
Hmm.
to cure things.
Yeah.
And so, but to get people excited about the craft, you can tell if they are or aren't by looking at their portfolio, and then to get people excited about the place, I think that's where it's the people, the purpose of the institution. But there are things that have to align, especially with being in trying to constantly come up with ideas and ways to share things. I don't know if you've ever read the book like Water for Chocolate, and
No.
yeah, it's a movie too. I just watched the movie. I was supposed to read the book, but I wasn't the strongest of readers back in the day. But thanks to Twitter, I'm way better. Uh, but it's sort of like whatever passion or whatever you're feeling at the moment that you're preparing the meal, when people consume that meal, that's they take on those emotions.
Hmm.
So having the passion for the craft and the passion for the place, people creating that content with those two ingredients, the people that consume it, can tell. You can tell when something's forced,
Yeah.
man. I can look, even uh, looking at my past.
Yeah.
I can look at things that I'm like, yeah, that was more of a checkbox that I had to do
Yeah.
versus something that I loved to do.
Yeah. Yeah. When you
Yeah,
so
so evaluating that, I don't know, man. That's where you do the one-on-one interviews where you can actually talk to the people and see what they're doing.
yeah.
And for University of Florida, man, if you graduated from here, I mean, that's it. It's like, okay, tell me more about what you did while you were here.
Yeah. Yeah.
So our two most recent hires are videographers, and they both graduate from the University of Florida, and they're passionate about the place,
Yeah.
and they're both passionate about the craft of, capturing things on film.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. That's yeah, I mean that makes a ton of sense. You talked about like a major KPI that you guys were focused on of hey, get into the top 10, get into the top 5, but then like
super easy to measure.
yeah,
You
yeah.
find those results all the
But
time.
but
So
but like yeah, yeah. When you think about like other key performance indicators for your team, like how again you guys don't necessarily have well, I shouldn't say this. I would imagine that you're not directly responsible for increasing enrollment at a particular percentage point each academic cycle and whatnot. So like, and I imagine too that maybe there's some fundraising KPIs baked in there, but that's not your kind of core focus. So like, what do you and your team like? How are you measuring kind of success throughout the year? What are you guys
yeah, but
looking at?
so those things that you mentioned are still part of the metrics that
Sure.
US News uses. So it's like if we get a smarter class, all the better.
Yep.
If we get more people to donate, all the better. That's engagement of alumni. Who
Yep.
knew? So those are all things that are focus pieces. But I mean, in this, I say don't let numbers dictate, let them motivate. But the metrics around following, the metrics around engagement, uh, those are important to get a pulse of what you're doing. And I don't, if you're not growing in a arena, then maybe it's time to go to the next arena.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's things. I mean, the amount of time that we've dedicated to MySpace in the past, 7 years has been zero.
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
amount of time we spent on Pinterest in the past 5 years, not really there. But I think as things evolve and there's new opportunities, you start moving things. And so I think constantly growing your community, and how do you measure that? I mean, followers for sure, but then you can also look at, if you're using big products like Brandwatch, you can see like, the mentions that are popping and how your influencers who follow you.
Yeah.
One of the metrics that we used back in the early days to see if our content was popping was to see how many of the football players were actually following, the Twitter account, because it was
Interesting.
like if they're following it, it's so it was a cool way. I forget what we called it, but it was we had a whole bunch of different things, metrics that mattered to us, and getting that being worthy of being followed by a football player who doesn't, a starting quarterback, that was a metric. It's kind of a strange thing. But and also another metric was how many negative comments we could get on something,
Hmm.
because that meant that it was getting outside of your little tiny sphere. Your everybody who's a fan of you will see everything you put out there, but the people who aren't fans of you, it takes it getting to a new audience to so
That's actually
letting the
that's a fascinating metric. That's
yeah, no,
awesome.
and it's great too because it helped uh when you work in social, you take a lot of things personally. So if you had a negative comment, you'd go, oh man, we're not good. What do we do here? This is bad. Oh, but if it's a metric that makes it, a success metric, you're like, all right, we got another one. All right. So it worked.
How do you guys like talk to me about TikTok? So I know that you guys joined early
Mm-hmm.
for higher
Yeah.
ed, and I also know that your accounts are one of the most talked about, if not the most talked about in higher ed. So like what has your TikTok strategy been, and have you been surprised? Like how do you think through sort of like leading strategy on TikTok? Is it led? Is it pretty whimsical in nature in terms of how and when you all decide to create content, or what does that look like?
Well, I mean, TikTok, let's be real, man. Ryan Morhone, who used to be the social media specialist here, and I were huge fans of Vine. And when Vine died, um, we were always looking for the next Vine. And then so when TikTok kind of surfaced, I was like, "Yo, Ryan, this is kind of like Vine, man. Let's play on here." Uh, so this, like most things hatch from personal preference, and it was like this is something that we need to at least play with. So, you always had to make time in the schedule to go out and play and explore, and or else you become so irrelevant, or you become the brand or the university that like jumps on trends when they're too late, and
Yeah,
then you look like you're needy and you're just there to be there, and
playing
that's
catch up. Yeah.
yeah. So I mean, if you get on early, you get to figure out the lay of the land and figure out how the tool works and what doesn't work. But of course, that all evolves as more people show up. But it's cool to be there early. And I think like so opportunities. You say TikTok's had its moment, and maybe there's something else out there, and what's next. But like they announced like 10-minute videos,
Yeah.
and it's like you do unexpected things in expected places, or expected things in unexpected places, right? So 10 minutes to me is like a new gift, and it's like let's put a 10-minute lecture up there. Let's do something that's not ever seen on there. And then what plays well outside of on this campus, and we have experts everywhere doing awesome things. We have students doing awesome things. So let's do something that's 10 minutes and put it out there and just see how it goes. And that's the best part about social is, I mean, what's the drawback of putting out a 10-minute video? It's the time that it takes to capture it maybe, or edit it together and put it up there. But if it flops, man, it flops. We'll move on, man. People will still remember our name for other things.
Yeah.
It's not going to destroy our brand because we put up a video that was 10 minutes.
So
It's a
what are like you personally most excited about right now? Like as you think about the social
honestly,
landscape.
man, it's more about how if the web does or social web does become more decentralized and we do move into this Web3 arena,
Yeah.
that ownership of things, I think is such a huge advantage for higher ed that because of our communities that we built. And we built these communities. Uh, we've been building communities long before the internet existed. I mean, when I went to college, there was no internet. It's Al Gore's basement. It's a joke I always use. Um, but there was you show up on campus, join a fraternity, maybe, but the community kind of like it every touch point, whether it's some student affairs thing or within your college, with a student org, there it's all about building community. And so universities have done this since the dawn of time. When you go to college and you move into a dorm and you have or a residence hall, you get a roommate, and then you become friends for life. And it's like, but that's the universities are making all that happen. At least the traditional brick and mortar ones. So it's like, um, that's something that we've always done. And
Yeah.
now as we move into, social was an opportunity to exploit that. Social was an opportunity to make that stronger, once people became more familiar with the platforms and the fun of content creation, not as a university, but as the students and the community. And then as we move into Web3, I think the only way that universities will remain relevant, especially if the ownership of content is on individuals, is it's like, man, if you haven't built that army, it's too late to try to win the war, and there's no way a university that hasn't been using social to build community is going to be able to survive in a Web3 environment,
Yeah.
unless they like find some weird way to, go out and, you know, I don't know, create these intern teams that will just, be more spammy than anything, So it's
Y-
future
Yeah.
is definitely, taking that community that you've built and activating them in a space where there's zero control on your end
Yeah.
and giving them the great things on campus to share and the great experiences.
What do you think about like apps like Zemi as like a stepping stone towards this? Like what are your thoughts on that?
I'm not going to shit on any of your sponsors, man. Right. So I'll just say that I like things that I can touch without having to create a new environment. I like things that are more for everybody. I don't like walled gardens. I don't
Yeah.
even know if it is a walled garden, but I like things that are more in the public stream.
Yeah.
And I feel like that the good and bad of that is what excites me.
Yeah.
I want to know when someone's had a horrible experience on campus because that's an opportunity to fix something,
Yeah.
and I want the world to know too because it also puts a little heat, higher up. Hey, what's going on? Let's fix this. I think that I like things out in the open.
Yeah, yeah. No, that's totally fair. What about like your own like creative process? Like when you've got a big project that you're working on, or you're going to you want to set up sort of like the voice of a new social network or whatever it is that you guys are launching new accounts for. How do you approach that? Like where are your sources of creative inspiration? Where do they come from?
Yeah, I've always been a huge fan of like whiteboards and post-it notes, and uh, I like when people say there are no bad ideas, but there are, dude. But the best part about bad ideas is it usually sparks someone else to have a good idea.
Yeah.
So I enjoy the um, diverse groups of people in the room. Maybe not at the very beginning when you're, doing the research and whatnot, but once you start hammering things out and you can get a bigger group together, no more than 6 people, because then it just turns into it's just terrible. So keep those groups small, but make sure that they have diverse perspectives and experiences, and try to figure out and represent different interest in things. Like there's sometimes the best ideas for social come from people that won't ever touch it,
Yeah.
and it's like
Yeah.
because we're all human and it's all about just, you know, I don't know, man. It's don't I would say the worst way to do anything is just to sit in your office with the door closed and try to hammer something out. Or if you sit down on a keyboard and just like start filling out a form and just like this is this is the goal, this is the audience, this is how we're going to do it, here's the implementation plan, here's how we're going to adjust if this happens. Nah, man, I think that's important for some people to see, but if that's where your stuff is starting, like water for chocolate, let's go find some ingredients and let's make them with love and for good reasons, and then it usually just all boils down into something that when it's consumed people feel good.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you think like over the next couple of years, let's just say, yeah, the next like 24 months here, like what are some predictions you have for content, for social, for you don't know, you're shaking your head, but
No, no, in 24 months, man. Shit, are we going to be here in 24 months? Is the world still around? No, with I think that's a interesting way to look at it. But I mean, things happen too damn fast to even consider 24 months. Like 24 months, nah, no, we're good. Let's go now, dude. There's going to be another pandemic. We're all going to die.
next 3 to 6 months, next 3 to 6 months, yeah, this fall, fine, fine, fine.
Fall. Like I think TikTok's doing some interesting things from the marketing side. Uh, I was tweeting about this and I got a longer rant on some things, but it's like if we could, what we've always tried to do is to make sure that uh, the people that are sharing the content have a place to share it, but then we try to like turn it into a marketing thing. And how do we get them more engaged? I think TikTok is kind of doing that, but they got the bar set at like 10,000 followers. And I love if they came up with like a higher ed product where it was like 1,000 followers,
Yeah.
and we could say, they're within our geo fence, so they're verified as University of Florida, and we could have this bigger pool of things. And then you start winning that thing where what do they want? They want more exposure. What do we have? We have a channel that will give them more exposure. And we also, if it's a paid thing, we can promote their things, and they'll grow their followers and whatnot, and they'll get what they want out of it. We'll get what we want out of it. It'll be a happy community of content. But yeah, I don't. There's things that come and go. There's things that evolve. I thought Yik Yak, everybody hated Yik Yak. University of Florida did some great things. Our J School is awesome, and they partnered up with Yik Yak back in the days when everybody hated it. But they actually worked with them to like provide like a news feed on Yik Yak. I think we were the only ones that had that.
Huh.
But so you go to Yik Yak and people just wanted to do whatever they do on Yik Yak. But then they kind of were force fed some like news, but it was from students, so it wasn't like corrupt. It was actual news that was useful. Like, hey, here's what's happening with the fire that happened at the stadium. And people wanted to read it. But yeah, this metaverse thing, I don't know. I don't know how I feel about putting on the goggles and going through a metaverse of campus. I think it has its place. And I think that if COVID gave us one thing, it gave us an entire, or not entire, but at least the working population was forced to do this Zoom stuff, man. And there's no way, like back in February, we were trying to convince everybody to go on Zoom. My team, we all fired up Zoom. We had it on our phones and we were playing with it constantly and saying, hey, this is how it's going to be, dude, if this keeps on happening. And then, but there's people that are like, no, what is Zoom? What is Zoom? What is Zoom?
Yeah.
But then it's like, hey, now, no, man, you fire up a Zoom and there's people in there that no way in hell they would have ever been on Zoom unless the pandemic forced us to change how we think about technology. So I don't know. I think things are ripe to evolve. I think higher ed is positioned greatly, and I know I am jaded since I do work at a flagship university doing epic shit daily. But it's like if I position myself back at UW Green Bay, more of a regional school, we weren't the flagship. We always looked at Madison saying, oh, Madison, you do everything. We don't, but it's like those younger, scrappy schools that might be, have smaller social followings still have the same opportunities, man. And especially as the world evolves around us, they have the opportunity to strike quicker than some of the larger ones that might be more bureaucratic.
Yeah.
So I think higher ed's good.
Yeah.
We're good.
This is awesome, man. Last final question. I know you got to bounce in a second here. So last question for you is just like who are your favorite like people or brands to follow on social, and like who do you like learn from inside or outside of higher ed?
Yeah, man. Every time someone asks me anything about that, I always go, "There's nobody. There's nobody." But there have been people over the years, like Mike Petroff up at and he's at Harvard Business, whatever it is, review. But back in the day, he was their social person, and he got on Giphy. I pronounce it GIF, but they pronounce it Giphy. He got on there, and he was on there before UF, but we're well over 5 billion GIF views, so we're beating Harvard now. But him joining that allowed me to go to my boss and say, hey, man, we want to create this account. And it's like, well, no, what is this thing? It's animated GIFs. I know, weird, right? And it's like, yeah, not doing it. It's like, but Harvard's doing it. And it's like, boom, green light, go ahead. So I think Mike was huge in helping the University of Florida become the top viewed university. Texas A&M, SEC love here, but Texas A&M, they're built different with the whole, I don't know what they do with their community, but they're built different. So they're pretty strong with what they do. And Krista does a great job. I think she's in a new role there. And I'd love to see that evolve. I'd love to see someone that has the inside baseball knowledge of a social media person with the nights and the weekends and dedicating your passion for social into the place, moving up the ladder into a new role that is more, it has a chance to help social, become part of the organic nature of the marketing communications team. I think that's great. I'm very, I want to say jealous of Texas A&M, but they definitely, their community
keep you on your toes. Hey.
No, there's something, man.
Yeah.
I think it's because they're in Texas. We got beaches here and Disney World, and people are doing other things. I think they're really strong, man.
Yeah.
So they're great. Outside of higher ed, I mean, I don't know. I haven't been to Wendy's in forever, and I enjoy the snark, but I don't think that's necessarily a great use of social. There's
That's a hot take. Yeah.
It's not a hot take, man. I don't think. When's the last time you were at Wendy's?
Never. But people.
There you go.
People
there you go, man.
Yeah, they fangirl over Wendy's Twitter. But
good for you. But it's like it didn't help the bottom line. I don't think so. I think what's helping bottom line, if we want to talk fast food, McDonald's joined Workplace on Facebook. Zuckerberg did his 20 nugget thing or whatever. But we were gifted the opportunity from Facebook because we're University of Florida back in the day. So like 2015 or 16 to join Facebook at Work was what Workplace was called. And I think that we could put that down as something that could evolve higher ed if we created something that's familiar. So Facebook's familiar to everybody on this campus. If we could create a Facebook just for our campus community, sans students, no students, just faculty and staff, where we could create all these different groups of all these different people doing all these different things and be able to have people like my team jump in and see what everybody's working on and find these different angles. Not only that, the interdisciplinarity of campus. We have 16 colleges on one physical campus. There's so many ways that things could cross-pollinate. Right now we're doing that with AI. We're doing AI across the curriculum. And you start seeing it, that these different areas, whether it's art, you always think engineering, but it could be art, and there's people that are talking. So Facebook Workplace, I think I'm glad that McDonald's I don't know how I think it's going to revolutionize the fast food industry. I have no idea what they're going to do on there, but if you see new offerings, maybe it was sparked on Workplace.
Yeah.
But I think that these communities that are easily embraced. So like with Workplace, if you understand Facebook, if you've been on Facebook, you understand Workplace. I think where it gets tough is when you say, hey, why aren't we doing this as the university still? And it's like, well, we have Yammer as a product. And it's like, I don't know how to do Yammer.
Yeah.
I don't want to learn how to do Yammer.
Yeah.
But if there's a Twitter and it was just for campus, I'd be all over it, man. If it was, Twitter campus, I'd be all over it.
Yeah.
So
no, that's brilliant. I mean, it makes a ton of sense, and that's why getting people to adopt new technology, new software of any kind is always so difficult. No matter how valuable or how beautiful the product actually is, you're forcing people to change behavior and getting them used to a new way of consuming something, or asking them to consume things in a different way, and that's just
asking them to consume things that they know aren't going to be there forever.
Yeah.
Whereas Facebook, it's got a history.
Yeah.
Interesting. So it's like. Yeah. Don't give people things that are so disposable and they know you're going to dispose of it after you log in and create your new account and all this nonsense. And then
2 years later, you're on
done.
Something else. Yeah. Well, dude, this has been amazing. I appreciate your time, sir. Thanks for connecting on Twitter. Thanks for the great work that you do. We'll have your social handles and all that fun stuff below in the show notes. If you're listening and want to connect with Todd, scroll on down and you can do so. But appreciate your time, and thanks for hopping on so last minute.
Yeah, I wish I was more attentive. I feel like I zoned out a few times, but it was fun being here, and I'll thank Seth in private for throwing my name out.
Yes, of course. Hey y'all, Zach here from Enrollify. I hope you enjoyed this episode of the Enrollify podcast. If you liked this episode, do us a huge favor and hit that follow and subscribe button below. Furthermore, if you've got just 2 minutes to spare, we would greatly appreciate you leaving a rating and a review of this show on Apple Podcasts. Our podcast network is growing by the month, and we've got a plethora of marketing, admissions, and higher ed technology shows that are jam-packed with stories, ideas, and frameworks that are all designed to empower you to become a better higher ed professional. But Enrollify is far more than just a podcast network. Enrollify is where higher ed comes to learn new marketing skills, discover new products and services, and find their next job. We're a growing learning community of 4,000 members, and we'd love to welcome you into the fold. You can access our free blog articles, newsletters, e-courses, and more, or purchase our master course on how to market a university with Terry Flannery at Enrollify.org. We look forward to meeting you soon and welcoming you into the community. Again, you can subscribe for free at Enrollify.org.